brought seeds from Italy in 2011. We were still farming near Lone Star at that time. And as we told people about what we were up to, we got three questions usually. The first one is, well, how did you get into importing Italian seeds? Usually said with that exact tone of voice. What's so special or what's so great about Italian seeds? And will Italian seeds grow here? So just to get launched, I'd like to answer those three questions for you briefly. The first one is, how did we get into Italian seeds? Well, we were farming. We had been farming since about 1987. We grew organic vegetables and cut flowers, and we sold through the Rolling Prairie Farmers Alliance, as well as to the Merck and to various other locations such as restaurants in Lawrence. This is a photo of our farm in the Wakarusa Valley near Lone Star. We were blessed with incredible soil out there, deep black soil. In fact, one time some USDA soil scientists from Beltsville, Maryland came and they got down on their knees and practically worshiped our soil. They were so amazed at the Kansas soils that we were able to grow our vegetables in. Over the years, we really focused on cut flowers, and we had one big buyer that was a florist in Topeka called Porterfield's Flowers. And we also sold bouquets at the Merck. And I published my book about cut flowers, the first edition in 1997 and the second one in 2007. And that book is still selling very well. There's a whole new generation of cut flower growers who are coming on board, and it's just been really exciting to see that happening. We had other jobs. My husband, Dan Nagengast, was the director of the Kansas Rural Center, and I was the publisher and the founder of Growing for Market magazine. And that is sort of how we got into owning seeds from Italy. I was taking a phone call from one of my advertisers, Bill McKay, who owned a business called Seeds from Italy, one day in 2010. And he said, well, I hoped I wasn't going to be placing this ad this year because I thought I had sold the business, but it fell through. And it was like the instant he said that, I just knew this was the next thing that we were going to be doing with our lives. So we entered negotiations with Bill. We got clearance from the folks in Italy to buy the business from him and become their distributor. And so that's how we got to be the US distributor for Franchi Cementi. Franchi is a really amazing company. It was founded in 1783, which was the year the American Revolution ended. And it has been in the same family for 7 generations. That's not so unusual in Italy. 70% of Italian employment is with family-owned businesses. Franchi is based in Bergamo, and it has distributors in 61 countries worldwide. And one of the interesting things about Franchi and every other seed company in Europe is that they kind of share the stewardship of heirloom varieties. And Franchi, being one of the bigger companies, has the stewardship responsibilities for a number of vegetables. And basically what that means is that they grow out the seeds every so often and make sure that those seeds will be available for future generations. Franchi is in the north of Italy, almost up there by Switzerland. And on a fine day, if you look in the distance, you can see the Alps. This is the trial ground out behind the Franchi packing plant. And they do a good job of growing out varieties to ensure that they are true to type and that you are getting what you think you're buying. The next question that comes up is, okay, so why Italian? What's so great about Italian vegetables? First of all, Italy is a vegetable-intensive culture. If you've ever traveled in Italy, you know that every town of any size has a farmer's market, often a huge farmer's market, at least once a week, and that there are also these produce shops where fresh produce is displayed outside on the sidewalk. And it's usually unpackaged and very, very fresh, very high quality. A few words of advice if you ever go back to Italy about buying produce is that you never pick it up yourself. You always ask the merchant to get it for you. Learn to convert pounds to kilos so you can order the amount you really want. And also the comma in the price signs is the same as our decimal point and vice versa. So the price of these beans is 3.5 euros per kilogram, and a kilo is 2.2 pounds. Italians are accustomed to eating very fresh produce, most of it grown in Italy, which has a large vegetable agriculture in several parts of the country. You'll always see the place of origin listed on the signs at these markets. The second thing that's special about Italian vegetables is the way heirloom varieties are valued. In the United States, every year we get our seed catalogs and we look for what's new. And that is one of the delightful aspects about gardening, is finding improved varieties that solve problems for you. In Italy, the opposite is true. People really revere what is old and what has been tested by time, things that have been passed down. Now, unfortunately, the seed industry is influenced by their biggest buyer, which is the farmers, the commercial growers of vegetable crops. And so a lot of heirloom varieties are in danger of going away, including even really iconic things like the San Marzano tomato. They are no longer grown commercially, and so it's really up to gardeners who grow heirlooms to keep the demand for heirloom seeds alive. The third thing that I really appreciated about Italian vegetables is that they're so regional. Every location has its favorites. For example, we sell 24 varieties of zucchini, and pretty much every one of them is named for a place. You may think a zucchini is a zucchini, but the Italians don't feel that way. We have a dark green one from Milan, a pale green one from Sicily, a round one from Piacenza, a chubby one from Bologna, a long slender one from Florence, and so on. And that is true not just with zucchini, but with lots of other vegetables as well. At the same time, Italian vegetables, especially from Franchi, are not just those that are typical Italian vegetables. They adopt varieties from all over the world. As long as it tastes good, they will grow it. So if you look at some of the things that we sell across that top tier, those are all French heirloom varieties. The Viroflay was grown in the 18th century. I'm sorry, in the 16th century. The asparagus was developed in France in the 1860s, and the bean comes from Algeria by way of France in the 1840s. And in the bottom row, you can see a beet from Egypt, a kale from Portugal, and a melon from Japan. We even sell a number of varieties that are traditional Americans varieties, such as the Gentilina lettuce, which is known in the United States as Grand Rapids, and it was bred in Michigan in the late 1800s. Final question we always hear, will Italian seeds grow here? Why, yes, they will grow here. If we go back to that map of Italy, it goes from the Alps in the north to practically Africa in the south in Sicily. So the climate variation is quite dramatic, and the landscape is also quite dramatically different from one place to another. And so in that regard, it's not so different from the United States. In fact, if you look at Italy's location on the globe and compare it to ours, you will see that most of Italy is actually more northern than most of the United States. Lawrence is at a latitude of about 39 degrees, and the Upper Peninsula of Michigan is about 45 degrees. So look at where that falls in Italy. Lawrence is down there at the same latitude as the boot, the toe of the boot, and Milan is up where the Upper Peninsula of Michigan would be. This is a picture of an iconic Italian vegetable called cavolo nero that I took when we were visiting the gardens at Villa d'Este overlooking Lake Como in northern Italy. And here it is growing in North Lawrence in my garden. Cavolo nero is one of those things that is considered an absolutely essential vegetable, especially for the traditional Tuscan soup called ribollita. And this recipe starts with 7 cups of Italian vegetables, of cavolo nero. When Dan and I were market farmers in the beginning, long before the internet, we would always look for vegetable recipes that use lots and lots of vegetables. And this would have been a classic example of that. The idea being that we would sell more kale if we had recipes that required 7 cups of it. This cookbook, by the way, I would recommend highly to you if you're interested in learning more about Italian cuisine. It's called The Silver Spoon. It's been in print for 60 years, and it is Italy's best-selling cookbook. And this is the English edition, and it is a beautiful cookbook, 1,500 pages with more than 2,000 recipes. So I'm not really going to talk very much about tomatoes because everybody thinks that's what Italian food is all about. And as master gardeners, I'm pretty sure you know how to grow tomatoes. Instead, I'd like to talk about some of the things that are important ingredients in special Italian dishes and that may be a little bit different from the varieties that you normally see in our country. So this first category are the squash, the zucca, zucchini, and zucchetta. The first one are the zucca. These are the winter squash. And in Italy, you will often see a recipe that calls for pumpkin. It doesn't mean pumpkin the same way that we think of a pumpkin like a jack-o'-lantern pumpkin. It means a winter squash with orange flesh. And we sell several varieties that are just the most gorgeous, dynamic plants. And I say dynamic, meaning that they run like crazy. They're very, very large plants. They sprawl, they climb, they scramble up things, and they produce lots of fruit. And unlike the modern hybrid winter squash that you can buy from most seed companies, the heirlooms produce very, very large fruits. So here's an example. The top one is an 18-inch butternut squash, and it's called butternut rugosa, and rugosa is simply the Italian word for wrinkled. And this is what the inside looks like. It's delicious. We use it in all kinds of recipes. In the zucchini category, pardon me, my best-selling variety is the Striato d'Italia, which means striped Italian. It's got a particularly nutty flavor for a zucchini, and as you'll notice, it has kind of a big end at the flower end. And this is typical of a lot of Italian heirloom varieties. They have a very blunt end. They're not really bred to drop their flowers, but to hang on to their flowers. And there's a reason for that. The only problem I have with this zucchini, even though it is actually very, very flavorful and the plants are of a manageable size, unlike some heirloom varieties, is that those striped squash are about the same color as the ribbing on the stems, and it becomes really easy to miss them. And then you end up with a cat-sized zucchini. Squash blossoms are a very important traditional element of Italian cuisine. And of course, every squash, as you know, makes blossoms, and it's okay to pick the male flowers of any variety and use them for cooking. My advice would be to get out there early in the day before the insects have gotten to them and pick them just as they start to open and use them that way. But if you really get crazy about zucchini squash blossoms, there is a variety called San Pasquale that is known to produce a preponderance of male flowers. And so you will get lots more squash blossoms for cooking. Here's one example of how squash blossoms are used. This was a salad that we made at a cooking class that Dan and I took the last time we were in Umbria. And the chef who was teaching the class basically just made a batter out of flour, salt, and sparkling water. And he dredged the fresh squash blossoms in this and then deep fried them. And it came out to be the most delightful, crunchy complement to the very fresh salad. The third category of squash are the zucchetta. And this one is called Serpent of Sicily. It's also known as cucuzza, gaguzza, and pergola vine. It seems to be particular to the Mediterranean, and you will find it in Northern Africa as well as in Southern Europe. And it has lots of names, and the fruits that you see here are about as long as my arm. Here's the reason it's called pergola vine. It's very rambunctious. It scrambles up things, including trees, if you grow it too close to a tree. And it's actually a very beautiful way to provide shade if you have a pergola that you can grow it on. Unlike winter and summer squash, zucchetta have small white flowers, and technically they are edible gourds. Another one in this category is the zucchetta tromba d'Albenga. Tromba means trumpet, and Albenga is a city called the City of 100 Spires, located on the Italian Riviera, about halfway between Genoa and Nice. The zucchetta tromba d'Albenga can be eaten very small and young, or any time when the skin is tender, which would be the case with this photo here. Or you can just leave it on the vine to grow into a really cool autumn decoration. The growing tips of these vines are often eaten, and they're called tenerumi, and they will be cut off and sauteed in olive oil with a little bit of garlic. And it's kind of an unusual but interesting dish. So another one of those iconic Italian dishes is the prosciutto with melon. And we can certainly grow melons in this country, especially here in the Kansas River Valley. You will find this dish on pretty much every menu at every restaurant you go to in the summer. And here are some of the cantaloupe melons that we sell. The rampicante zuccherina means that it's sprawling and it's sugary, and Charente is an old French variety, and the ratato just means that it is a netted market gardener's melon. Our biggest category by far is the genus Chicoria. We have 47 varieties of chicories. At the bottom right in this photo is the classic round radicchio, which you can usually find in US supermarkets. The ruffly light green behind it is escarole, which is as tender as lettuce, but much better longevity in the refrigerator. And behind that is something very Italian that you never see in the US called puntarella. The thick white stems are cut very thin and then put into a bowl of ice water where they crisp up and curl. And then they're generally served as a salad with a dressing of lemon, olive oil, and anchovy. The other main type of red radicchio is called tardivo in Italy, also called treviso. And this is sort of the red leaf equivalent of a Belgian endive in that it is forced. So the plants grow in the summer, they are uprooted, and the tops are cut off and the roots are trimmed in the fall. And then they're packed in boxes of sand and covered tightly to exclude all light. And then when the farmers are ready to grow them, they bring them into a place that's about 50 to 60 degrees, keep them covered, and they put up this new growth that is mostly white stem, but with a little bit of red on them. I haven't done it, but I'm going to try it because I have one that survived the winter in my garden, and I thought I might just go dig it up and see what happens if I cover it for a few weeks. So in this genus chicory, we have all different kinds of things that look kind of like dandelions. The Brindisina is the puntarella one that I described to you earlier. There's kind of a red stem chicory. There are little cutting chicories in the bottom right corner. Anything that says datalio, that means it's for cutting. And it's just a very tender, small leaf that you would cut for a salad. And then on the bottom left, the pandazucchero, which is a sugarloaf chicory. All of these things are either grown to eat fresh, like the small one in the bottom right corner, but also to be cooked, which is something that we don't do a lot with greens in this country, but it's a good way to deal with a lot of these vegetables that have a bitter flavor, because cooking them just reduces the bitterness and makes them very rich and mellow. In the heading category, we have a number of different shapes and colors, and we've been amazed at how particular people are about which chicory they grow, because there are lots and lots of choices. Another slightly bitter category are the brassicas. We sell Cima de Rapa, which is actually a turnip top, and Broccolo spigariello, which is closer to a broccoli. And in Italy, there are basically two kinds of broccoli sold. One is called calabrese, and that's like the heading broccoli that we would eat here in this country. And the other one is like broccoletti, they would call it. And it's a thin-stemmed little broccoli head. And that's what this one in this picture will produce. They do eat the leaves along with the heads, though. Another plant that's grown for cooking is the chard verde d'Italia. You're all familiar with chard with ribs, but our best-selling variety is this one, which has no ribs. It grows kind of like spinach, a little more upright, but of course it has a chard flavor and all of the delightful chard nutrients. This is a very typical way of cooking some of these bitter greens. You blanch them first in water, drain them, and then you saute them in olive oil with garlic and pepper flakes. You often see them used in a pasta or just on the side as a contorno, a side dish to your meal. Salads are always on the menu in Italy, and they are endlessly inventive. I really like the salad mixes that Franchi produces. They are called misticanza, which just means mix, and they are meant to be direct seeded and cut as baby leaves. We have all kinds of mixes, some with as many as 14 varieties of lettuce, some with lettuce and chicory, some all chicory, and so on and so forth. And of course, the quintessential salad green in Italy is arugula. There are two main types, the cultivated, which is shown here, and that has a broad notched leaf, and the wild or selvatica, which has narrow, deeply lobed leaves. Cultivata germinates and grows super fast, and it loves Kansas. If you let any of it go to seed, you will find it in fall between the paving stones or growing in a crack in the sidewalk. It's also super cold hardy, so you can grow it pretty much all winter with a bit of row cover. In Italy, you'll often find it on top of a pizza. In hot weather, it gets a bit spicy, but it has a very mellow, rich flavor in cold weather. The next big category are the beans. Our customers at Seeds from Italy run probably 50% people with Italian heritage and 50% foodies, including a lot of farmers who sell to chefs. Among the first group, vegetables carry a lot of nostalgia. We hear so many stories from people reminiscing about growing up with their grandparents in the garden and learning to cook at their grandmother's elbow from the garden. And they want to give that gift to their children too. And for some reason, beans seem to hold a special place in people's hearts. We are constantly asked for a variety particular to some little town, and it may be very similar to another type of bean we sell, but sometimes people are on a quest for that exact bean. Some of our beans have a lot of history. There's a borlato, like the one on the right in this photo. It was known to have been given to the Pope by Spanish explorers in 1530. It's called limon. And one of the reasons that beans have been passed down for centuries is that they are so easy to save as seeds. The isolation distance between varieties is only 10 to 20 feet compared to 150 feet for tomatoes or a quarter mile for peppers. And the seeds just dry on the plant. Beans come in many shapes, sizes, and colors, so there's a whole lot of terminology. Rampicante on our labels means rambling, in this case, pole beans. They do require a trellis, but they'll produce all season long. Nano on our labels means bush beans, and they're easier to grow, but they tend to produce all at one time, so you have to succession plant if you want to long harvest. Borlato beans have speckled pods, and the bean seeds can be eaten fresh or left to dry for storage. French beans are round and maybe green, yellow, or purple. We have a combination of the three that grows particularly well around here. Roma beans have long, flat pods. These will get as long as 12 inches and still be very tender. It's probably our best-selling variety of, well, I hesitate to say of any vegetable because tomatoes have probably been our best-selling, but right now these super Marconi beans are probably our best-selling variety. And then finally, there's a type of bean called an anilino that has a curved pod. Those are kind of fun to grow. And each of these types come in both the rampicante type or pole bean type or the nano bush bean type. Another thing that you see in Italy a lot are the yard-long beans, which we think of as an Asian thing, but they're actually a good choice for Kansas in summer because the problem with beans is that they really can't tolerate a lot of heat. So you can't really plant, the seeds will rot if you plant them too early, but then once nighttime temperatures get too warm, they don't make any beans. The flowers they drop their flowers. So as hot as we get here in midsummer, beans usually don't do all that well. So one of the most heat tolerant is the yard long, and you can pick them way less than 1 yard long, maybe a third of a yard long, and you'll get the best flavor from them that way. Herbs are really essential to Italian cuisine, and if you have nothing else that you can grow that's Italian, you should definitely grow some herbs because they do so much for your cooking. There's no reason to buy those little clamshells that have lost most of their flavor by the time that you get them into your kitchen. And herbs are very, very easy to start from seed. Even the woody perennial herbs, such as sage and oregano, are super easy to grow from seed. I started these in mid-January, and here they are 2 months later, as happy as can be. When growing herbs, you want to use a heat mat because they do not like cool soil, and you want to just be patient because some of them will take up to 3 weeks to germinate. One other tip is that some herbs, especially the woody perennial ones, do require light for the seed to germinate. And so it's best to just dust them with vermiculite and then mist the vermiculite so that it holds moisture right around the seed, but the seed is still getting some light to it. And that is the case with rosemary, summer savory, and lavender. Basil. Everybody thinks of basil as being very Italian, and it is. And when we first bought seeds from Italy, I was really puzzled by the enormous number of seeds in a packet of basil. We were getting these packets that had 3,000 basil seeds in them. As market farmers, we always planted about 1,000 plants every summer, and then we picked leaves from them all season long to sell at farmers markets. So I really was kind of puzzled about what a normal backyard gardener would do with 3,000 basil seeds. And then I found out that in Italy, basil tends to be direct seeded, very close together, like you see in this picture. And then the plants are just pulled out and they're used as very, very young, very tender leaves. And then another succession goes in. So when you're growing it that way, you definitely need a lot more seeds than if you're just growing individual plants. And that's also a really great way to grow it in a pot. You can start several pots a couple of weeks apart, and as the basil leaves get to 3 or 4 inches, the basil plants get to 3 or 4 inches tall, you just pull them out and use them that way, and they are absolutely delicious that way. Well, I could carry on with a few other things that are particularly Italian, but really the message I want to leave you with is that the Italians eat every kind of vegetable. They have some things that are very particular to Italy, but for the most part, you can find basically anything at an Italian produce market. And so the key to really getting involved with good Italian cooking is to get yourself a good cookbook, find something that looks appetizing, and then grow the vegetables so that you will have the freshest possible ingredients for that. And now I'm going to end this and see if there are any questions for me.
Yes, Lynn, we do have some questions.
Great.
Chris, you look like you were going to talk and you're muted. Oh, okay. Let's see. I'm in the chat box, which I have just managed to erase, but wrote them down. There was a question about, will we be seeing tomato and pepper seeds this year?
We still don't know. If I could give you a little background on that. The tomatoes and pepper seeds became restricted for import by the US Department of Agriculture in November of 2019. Our seeds were on the container, they were loaded, the truck was literally ready to drive away when USDA issued this ruling. And so we got Frankie to pull them off, and we got the rest of our seeds as usual. But there is a type of tomato virus that affects tomatoes and peppers. It's a seed-borne virus that USDA is desperately trying to keep out of the United States because they think it would just decimate our commercial tomato industry. And so now all imported tomato and pepper has to be virus tested before it can be brought into this country. Unfortunately, by the time we got that process started, we had another virus that people were dealing with, especially in Italy early in 2020. Coronavirus just kind of ground everything to a halt. And so we have had a number of seeds tested, nowhere near the large selection that we had in previous years. And we think that they are on the way here right now, but we don't know. It's just so fraught, the whole situation with importing from Europe right now. And it's not that the Frankie factory isn't working, because they have been very safe and they're fully staffed and they're able to get things out. But right now the problem is that truckers won't go into Italy because of quarantine coming back out. And so shipping from Italy has become very difficult a couple of times during this past year. So I am not confident that we'll have them. I'm hopeful that we'll have them.
Thank you. That's very complicated.
It is, yeah. Yeah, importing is not that easy.
Let's see. We actually have, Kevin wants to know if any of your zucchinis, if there are any that the squash bugs are not interested in.
So those zucchettas are really immune to the squash bugs. if you want to try them, just cut them really small and they taste just like a zucchini. As for any other of the regular zucchini varieties, no. But in some ways, zucchetta is a great response to the whole problem of squash bugs and cucumber beetles.
We had a comment here that somebody was trying to look up the Italian seeds on the website and kept encountering Amazon. The solution was in the chat box, whereas if you try another search engine, sometimes you can get to the Italian seed website, not Amazon.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yes, they're in competition with us, and a lot of people buy large packets of seed from us because our seed packets are so enormous. And there are a lot of resellers on Amazon who will just buy like a packet of basil seed and then they'll sell you 30 basil seeds for $3. And you have no way of knowing, that you're getting somebody who is repacked, and it's strictly illegal, but we have plenty of business. We're not super worried about that kind of thing. But our website, and I can't believe I didn't add this to my PowerPoint. Our website is growitalian.com.
Okay, that's easy. We have a question here also. Are Italian flower seeds similarly wonderful?
Oh, I love my Italian flowers. So one of the things that's so great about growing heirloom anything is that you get a lot of variety, you get a lot of variability in your plants. And to me, that's a wonderful, exciting thing as a gardener. So if you're a commercial grower, you want everything to be the same. You want it to be predictable. You want them to all be the same size and so on. When you're growing these heirlooms, you get all kinds of things that just pop up, and they can be just the most wonderful things. And then you can save your seeds if you're cognizant of isolation distances and that kind of thing. And that way you can develop something that is really a favorite of yours. And that's certainly been the case with the zinnias that we bring in from Italy. I grow the dahlia flowered and the cactus flowered zinnias, and they're big, beautiful, robust plants with so many different flower shapes and colors and combinations of colors that I've started selecting some that I want to eventually call the Kansas series and hopefully sell them all over the world. Oh, and if I could add one other thing before we go off the topic of where to buy our seeds, Cotton's Hardware is the distributor in Lawrence for a large number of our seeds. They may not have every variety that's on our website, but they have a lot of them, and certainly the most popular ones. And Pendleton's Market also sells our seeds locally.
Now, there aren't any more questions in the chat box, so I'd like to open it up to any verbal questions if anybody would like to chime in with a question for Lynn. Go ahead and you can just unmute on the lower left and ask a question if you like. No?
Hi, this is Margaret.
Hi, Margaret.
I just wanted to tell you I've been using those seeds for years and I can only recommend them.
Thank you.
Oh, Jean has a question.
I was curious if there might be any particular vegetables that would grow in part shade.
Well, lettuce will grow in part shade. Arugula, the broccoli, like the broccoletto, the spigariello, that will grow in part shade. I think that the charred verde d'Italia does fairly well in part shade. I would guess, kind of in general, the greens are the things that will grow pretty well in part shade.
I have a question. Let me see if I can undo myself.
We can hear you.
Okay. I'm going to plant herbs in a raised bed and put it on our back patio. It gets a lot of heat and it gets sun most of the day. Mm-hmm. Do I need to do anything to make sure that it's warm underneath? I can't imagine in the Kansas sun that it won't be.
Yeah, I think that they'll be just fine. If they're in full sun and getting a lot of heat from the patio, I think
Yeah.
they'll do really well. Any of those Mediterranean herbs will really thrive there. I have my herb garden alongside the driveway, and it gets a lot of heat, and everything does just fine. You know, the rosemary, the Italian oregano, pretty much all of those woody perennial herbs. The lavender, we have a lavender, true lavender that you can grow from seed that seems, it's like on its third year here in my driveway. It survives very, very well in this situation.
So, so if we go to Cotton's Hardware, they would have herb seeds that you're talking
Yes.
about, the
Yes,
Italian?
the herb seeds are the ones with the pink behind the Franke name.
Okay. Thank you very much. This has been very helpful.
Sure.
Do we have any other questions for Lynn? Well, if not, I'd like to thank Lynn for getting us started on the vegetable growing season. It's coming up fast. We're all desperate to get out there and start planting in our garden.
It's the solstice, right?
Yeah. Here comes some more questions in the chat. So do you do tours of your farm?
We no longer have a farm. We moved into town in 2018 and sold our farm to a couple who are still doing cut flowers out there. Their farm, they call themselves Firefly Farm, and you can find them at the Lawrence Farmers Market. But no, we have nothing to give tours of at this point.
And then also we have a question here from Jamie. I am a new gardener and already bought a bunch of typical US veggie seeds before knowing about about the Italian veggies. What would you recommend as the best enhancements or veggies to start with to add to the garden?
So if you want something that's particularly Italian, I guess I would have to know how big your garden is to be able to make some specific recommendations, but.
Jamie, maybe you can unmute.
Okay, can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, awesome, thank you. This has been phenomenal. Thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, sure.
I'm fairly new. I live in Leavenworth,
Uh-huh.
and I just moved to this house about 1.5 years ago, so 6 months before the pandemic hit. So I'm new to kind of the Leavenworth gardening area, Kansas. I moved from Oklahoma, and I am surrounded by black walnut trees.
Oh.
Yeah, didn't know about black walnuts before I bought my house.
Yes.
Raised beds. You need some raised beds.
I'm doing containers,
Okay, yeah, that'll work.
trying to do that so I can move them out of the canopy and stuff. So
Right.
what would be the best place to start with like that?
So last year I used these things that we sell called Vigoroot felt planters. And I was amazed at how much I was able to grow in these things. They're a 20-liter soft pot that you can just fill with any kind of potting mix or potting mix and compost. And I was able to grow a custard white zucchini, which is the little patty pan type. I grew a Violetta lunga eggplant and another one. I grew all kinds of greens. I grew arugula and lettuce and chard and, you know, just all of those plants in the greens category in these little pots. And I grew a tomato, a cherry tomato in one, a determinate variety, so it didn't get really huge. But I was very pleased to find that, you know, I can supplement with these little pots of things, because it's very frustrating to have a small garden after you came from a 20-acre garden. I can never grow as many things as I would like to grow. And so being able to grow in these little lightweight pots was really great, because I could move them around as the sun patterns changed. When you live in town, you know, your neighbors' houses and the trees really influence when and where you have sun. And so this way I was able to kind of drag these little pots around all summer long to get them into enough sun, and even bring them into the garage at the beginning and end of the season to keep things going. So I would really recommend that you try at least a 20-liter, which is I don't know what that is, close to a 5-gallon pot, and just do one plant in each pot and see where that gets you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
And that name again, I believe people are putting in the chat, was Vigo root.
Yeah, it's Vigor Root. Thank you.
So I have a quick question.
Yeah.
This is Phyllis. Hi, Lynn.
Hi,
Nice
Phyllis.
to see you. Thank you.
too. I can't see you,
if I
but-
have some, if I have some old San Marzano seeds that I've saved, or I still have some left over, can I plant those?
You should definitely plant them and save the seeds, because who knows, you know, if those are going to disappear. I found a bunch of seed packets. I'm getting a weird echo. I found a bunch of seed packets that were dated 2015, 16, and I tried to start them, all tomato varieties, and I tried to start them, and every single one of them germinated almost at 100%. So if you've taken good care of your San Marzano seeds, then you should definitely try growing them and then saving the seeds. You don't need a whole lot of plants just because they make a lot of seeds. And the thing you do want to do is be sure that you're not growing other varieties when you're saving tomato seeds, because they, unless, well, you have a big farm, right? So you need 150 feet of isolation between your San Marzanos and any other varieties. So if you can grow them off from other tomatoes, then yeah, you should definitely try to save those seeds.
I had to mute you there, Phyllis.
Thank you.
Echo, but if you have a follow-up.
No, that's great. Thank you.
Sure.
Do we have any other questions, chat or verbal? Oh, are the Vigoroot planters available at Cotton's?
No, they don't sell them. We sell them on our website.
Linda, if you're trying to ask a question, you're muted. You are still muted.
Can we have your website, please, so that we can order some of those?
It's growitalian.com.
I'll put it in the box. Oh, there it is. Somebody has already done that for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, if we don't
Lynn.
have any more questions, I'm going to thank Lynn and turn this over to Chris to tell us what's coming up next month.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. And
Appreciate your interest.
it was great. I really was fascinated. So next month we have Leslie Wren, who works at K-State in the Department of Landscape Architecture, and she is going to do making outdoor space more livable. I was really committed to that topic for this year, given the COVID in this summer. So I'm also really looking forward to that one.
Okay, so thank yous in the chat. Thank you everybody for joining us, and we'll see you next month. Have a great weekend. The sun is shining and it's time to start planting. If you need any more information, feel free to visit us at the Douglas County Extension Lawn and Garden website. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, Sharon.